Morning, everyone. I'm Alex Casey. I'm co-director of Suffolk Artlink, a regional champion for the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance, and also doing some work as a partner organisation with the National Centre, including supporting this event today. So thank you all very much for joining. I'm going to very loosely chair. So speakers be warned, if you're running really over, I will jump in and nudge you, because I'm really keen that we do protect the last 15-20 minutes of today for questions. Although we're in a webinar format, please do put your questions in the chat as we go. Esther will collate those, but there will also be an opportunity to sort of raise a hand and be spotlighted to ask a question live in that part of today. We have a few speakers today, which is really exciting. Very briefly, we will be hearing from Olivia and Jayne from the National Centre for Creative Health, reflecting on the Creative Health Associate Programme. We have Jayne Knight from Suffolk County Council to talk about the Norfolk and Suffolk Culture Board mapping report and the work that's been leading to. We have Tim and Nick from Hertfordshire and West Essex ICB and Public Health to talk about from creative health from their system point of view and their part of the region. And we have Angie Foster from Britain Peers Arts to talk about it from a music and delivery perspective. And I will be giving an update from the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance as well. So we've got a lot to get through. And so I'm going to shut up now and immediately hand back over to Olivia.
As many people know me on the call, I'm Olivia Dean. I have been the Creative Health Associate for the East of England. This is our kind of swan song, or my swan song in that role. And so thank you very much for joining us on the call today.
Shall I kick off, Olivia? So
yeah,
hi,
thanks, Jayne.
Jayne Howard. I'm the Programme Manager at the National Centre for Creative Health. Great to be here today.
Handing over maybe to Nick.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nick Denham. I work in Herts County Council in the Public Health in their Evidence Intelligence team. I'm looking forward to talking to you later on.
And to Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Anfliogff. I'm Head of Community Resilience with the Integrated Care Board in Herts and West Essex, working closely with Nick on this agenda, and we're going to miss Olivia.
Thanks so much, Tim. And Angie.
Morning, everybody. I'm Angie Foster. I'm Programme Manager for Creative Health at Britain Peers Arts.
Thank you, Angie. And coming to Jayne Knight.
Good morning, I'm Jayne Knight. I'm the lead for the arts at Suffolk County Council, and I coordinate with colleagues at Norfolk County Council, the Norfolk and Suffolk Culture Board.
Thank you, Jayne. Alex Casey of Suffolk Artlink. All these people around the table have been very much my supporters in this role. So big thanks, and thanks for coming to the celebration. And I'm looking forward to going to dive into my presentation. I'm going to try and do this without being too wobbly throughout. So I'm going to go straight to my presentation if I can. Bear with me a sec. Oh, just to say, we should have had Louise Hardwick, who has also been a great support to me. Unfortunately, Louise is poorly today, but she would have been representing the Suffolk and North East Essex system, who have been really also another sort of key champion and player in this work in the East of England. Okay, hopefully you can see my slides. So I'm just going to start off by giving an overview of the Creative Health Associate Programme and what it's been. As I say, I've been looking after the East of England, and we're just going to roll through these. So I know for some of you around the table, you very much know what creative health is because you'll have heard me speak about it often. But I'm also aware that every time we do this, we attract new energy to the call. And so for those of you who are not familiar with the definition we're working to, it's on the screen now. And that we work to creative health being defined as creative approaches and activities which have benefits for our health and well-being. The activities we often think about, so it's things like singing, performing arts, crafts, film, it's going for a walk in a sculpture park, it's all those creative things that we do in nature, and cooking, the things that bring us together. Activities, I think health services really can think about quite easily. Sometimes we miss that it's also about that creative approach and innovative approaches to the design of health and social care services. So that includes co-production, working with people with lived experience of the arts making a massive difference to their health. And I know that we've got a lot of colleagues on the call who have got lived experience of ill health. So thank you for making it to the call today. And also it's really beneficial in workforce development and workforce wellbeing too. So there's many ways that the NHS and health services can utilise the arts in their work. A little bit of background. So this work hasn't sprung out of nowhere. There's been so much work for 50 plus years happening with regard to arts and health. One report there, which I know some people in Norfolk around the table may have been involved with, the Norfolk Arts and Wellbeing programme, a great piece of work, and also the Vital Communities work that happened. There's been so much of this research done. Tying it up under the umbrella of creative health is really helping to pull the two sectors, I think, health and arts together, to look at how we can make best use of the cultural assets. So to take that to a national level, just again to give you a little bit of background, there was an all-party parliamentary group on arts, health and wellbeing that did an inquiry report into arts and health to see what was happening essentially. And they found that as we round the table know, the arts can keep us well, aid recovery and support people to live longer lives that are better lived. The arts can help meet major challenges that are facing the health and social care sector, such as the ageing population. And not only can it help that sector to do that, but it can help that sector to do it in a cost-effective way. So it's really important, especially in these times when money seems to be so very tight, that we look at how we can work across sector together. So those were the key messages in 2017. The other thing that report recommended was that a National Centre for Creative Health be established. So that's the charity that I currently work for, and Jayne Howard has been programme manager for and will continue to be beyond the life of this programme. Jayne can tell you more about that in a moment. But it's quite a new charity. So it's established in 2020 and launched March 2021. It came out of that report, as I say, as a recommendation that a body be formed. And its mission is very much to advance good practice and research, promote collaboration. So that's a lot of what we've been doing as creative health associates in each of the English regions. There is a focus on health inequalities and striving towards that partnership working and place-based development. Go this way. 5 years in, the National Centre decided that it would be good to try and reflect on what happened since that 2017 report. So they launched a review of the work in 2022. You can find a lot of details about this piece of work on their website, and I would urge you, if any of these areas, these are all chapters, are of interest, please do go and take a little look in detail, because there are some really nice roundtable recordings and resources that came out of this piece of work that are available on the website. And the key messages that came out of that report that was launched December 2023 is, again, creative health is absolutely fundamental to a healthy and prosperous society, and its benefits should be available to all. And absolutely that creating conditions for creative health to flourish needs that whole system collaboration and us to come together. So I think, again, it's amazing that we've got so many people on the call from different sectors. So a little bit about the programme. The programme was Arts Council England funded. We were originally due to end in September 2024. We were granted a 1-month extension to continue work into October, and then this further extension, and I will finish enrol. The associates will all finish enrol at the end of the month. So we run up until 31st of March. There's been one of us in each of the English regions. It's been an amazing privilege to be part of this programme led by Jayne Howard, who's going to speak next. It's been around my own professional and personal development as well. There's been a lot of benefits in terms of coming together with colleagues who work in this area. I think sometimes you can feel like a bit of a lone worker, kind of trying to champion it in your area. So it's been an absolute privilege to me to see how much creative work is happening, not only in the east of England, but across the whole country. I really feel like we're leading the way globally with this development, and that it's really exciting to be part of it, and it's been a very exciting time to be part of it. The overarching aim was to create a step change in how creative health is delivered across England, and I think we made excellent inroads into doing that. I really feel that it's a journey that's going to go on, and again, I think Jayne will come on and say a little bit more about systems change after me. So integrated care systems, I've been speaking a lot about working across a system, and I'm not sure how many people on the call know this. So I've just popped up this King's Fund slide from 2022, when these bodies were first kind of coming into fruition. You may have heard of clinical commissioning groups. That was the sort of structure that integrated care systems were created to replace. So there's sort of some legacy there. That it's a health kind of structure, and it sits in two parts. So if you think of the system as being the whole thing, and then the structures for how that works is there's an integrated care board, and my role was hosted by Norfolk and Waveney Integrated Care Board, but working across the 6 NHS systems in the east. And there's also a partnership that is a kind of wider membership in that system. So just to have a little look at some of the structures and the detail of the structures for that in Norfolk and Waveney, you can see that at system level, we're talking about supporting the health of 1.1 million people, and that is mostly in Norfolk with a little bit of Suffolk here, Waveney, in this system. And then at place level, it's not so neat and tidy in Norfolk and Waveney. These don't align quite to the traditional boundaries. In some areas, Herts and West Essex, I think that their places align a little bit more clearly, but this is all very much in development at the moment. So you've got that kind of place level, and then there's a health and wellbeing partnership level, which is a little bit more aligning to that kind of district here. And then very much neighbourhood working will be of interest to the arts practitioners on the call, who are thinking, who do I reach? How do I connect with to promote my project, or to, if I need to recruit for a piece of work that I'm doing, how best to do that? You're probably thinking neighbourhood level, so you may want to engage with your primary care networks and or integrated neighbourhood teams, which again are a new structure that's in development. And then there's just another one that kind of gives a picture of the Norfolk and Waveney as an integrated care system. So some headlines for the programme. Absolutely, we've found that the integrated care systems do recognise the value of creative approaches. The NHS Change programme has been a challenge in the work. I think there's a real disparity between the pace of work and how things can happen in local authority and NHS that have got quite bureaucratic and formal structures and ways to progress things, whereas the arts sector can be quite responsive and can do things is sometimes a little bit more nimble, I think, to be able to create things. So I think learning each other's language and learning how best to work to each other's strengths when the sectors are coming together is important. The change programme, we had felt that we were through it. There was 30% cuts needed. Obviously, the news last week means that we're very much not through it. So I'm not going to cover that. Jayne Howard can talk a little bit, hopefully, on how we work in this state of flux. Again, things that have come up is the challenges of short-term funding. So doing this work in a short-term space has been exciting, but also there's so much more work to be done. So I really feel like I'm hopefully handing the baton to you people on the call to hopefully take it forward in your areas as best you can. And there has been lots of energy from the different sectors to work together. So NCCH has got a GP special interest group. So if you're a GP on the call, please do take a look at that. We've got wonderful creative health champions. Tim is one. Louise, unfortunately, who couldn't be with us this morning because she's poorly, is another one for the East of England. They are working at system level. So that potentially, if you're working system, that might be something that you would be able to get involved with. Another real highlight from the programme has been the wonderful mapping work that I've been doing in partnership with Creative Lives. That has very much come out of some development and groundwork laid by the Norfolk and Suffolk Cultural Partnership, and Jayne Knight's going to talk to us a little bit more about that. And then finally, there was a little bit of sort of match funding from the Bearing Foundation that supported us to do creative health huddles. Darren from the Restoration Trust, I think, may be on the call with us this morning. The Restoration Trust were one of the recipients of sort of huddles support and did an excellent work with joining up arts, heritage and social prescribing in the Breckland area. So there were, I think, another 5 pieces of work that we did. So we also had Norwich Theatre Royal involved with that, and also a lovely organisation in Norwich called Mind the Gap. Peterborough Presents were part of huddles. So it's been exciting. We've done lots, and way too much for me to cram in today. I feel like I might be running short on time. So just to do this little slide about creative health in its many forms, where it sits. Sometimes I think people can worry that, oh, are we going to over medicalize the arts? Absolutely not. What we're trying to do is shine a spotlight on the fact that there's a lot of arts for well-being that could do with more strategic support. So if you look at this outer ring, we have all the arts that we do for our connection and enjoyment. Also things like sport and heritage, creativity, all the well-being in the world, that stays there. That's generally funded in its normal streams. And then in the middle, you've got hospital arts, where very acute settings that use the arts for health. But sometimes this kind of organizations that are working in this middle could do with more support from the system. So it's thinking about how we can best utilize and support those cultural practitioners who are delivering arts activity with a specific health and well-being focus, and make sure that we are protecting those assets and making best use of those assets within the system. And I couldn't get through a whole slide deck on National Social Prescribing Day without mentioning social prescribing. So this is from the Singing for Health Network. And it just is another kind of showing that arts happens in intensive clinical settings. Arts happens in this sort of space in the middle. And then arts obviously happens much wider in the community. And just an example from Norfolk and Suffolk at the moment, we've got a singing group that potentially is going to close because it's not getting enough referrals through. Now, that's not because there aren't people with COPD in Norfolk and Suffolk. That's because we need to get stronger at working together as a sector. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to her, Jayne Howard. I hope I didn't go on too long. So Jayne.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Liv. That was fantastic sort of overview of that programme. And if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I've had the privilege of being the programme manager for this programme over the last 18 to 20 months, working with the 7 associates. And if you'll just indulge me for a moment in just wanting to pay tribute to the fantastic work that they have all done, and particularly a big thank you to Liv for the work that she's done in the East. You know, as you'll hear as I come on to the meat of my presentation, you know, this is a complex and challenging role, and they have absolutely embraced it with such enthusiasm and passion and care and concern, and it's been an absolute privilege to work with them. So I'm going to try and stop now, because before otherwise I'll start to get all emotional as well. But yeah, so the programme, it's been a really exploratory programme. It was really about saying, well, how can we embed creative health in systems? Where are the opportunities? What are the things that might help that to work? What are the things that we need to overcome in order to to make progress with this? And we're currently coming to the end of this programme, which is it's an opportunity for us to sort of pause and reflect and think about, well, what comes next. So we'll be producing a report on the programme, which will be a combination of a report on what happened, what was done, what the achievements were. But also, as part of that report, we've commissioned some external evaluators to look at what has been the impact of these roles and how have they sat in the systems. And they've taken a really interesting approach to this, which is what I wanted to share with you this morning. So they've taken a mixed methods approach to the evaluation, but really framed by systems thinking. And I think it's really valuable for us as we move forward in what, Liv's already alluded to is a sort of uncertain and uncertain system. And how do we navigate that? So the methods that they've used have included one-to-one interviews with the core team, online focus groups with a whole range of stakeholders, a sort of broad brush stakeholder survey, and then they've run 2 systems thinking workshops with the core team and with stakeholders to sort of make sense of the findings and to start to frame the learning points and the recommendations. What I wanted to share with you was the systems framework that they've been using, because I think we found it to be really helpful. So just bear with me while I find my slide, and I have only got one slide, which is here. Yeah, hopefully you can all see that. So this is the 2 loops model, which was the Kana 2 loops model developed by Margaret Wheatley and Deborah Fries, and we can send links to this if that's helpful. And basically the 2 loops model is a sort of framework for thinking about how change happens in systems, and it sort of really charts the movement and relationships between what on this left hand side here, this top loop is they call the incumbent system. That's what we've currently got, and what we've got is what they describe as the emerging system, the new ways of working. As I say, we found this a really helpful model for positioning what we've done. It's not what we use to plan the work, but we can certainly use it for that in the future, thinking about what these roles, what these sorts of roles can do and how they can be most helpful. So in essence, it's showing how the current system sort of shifts from its peak really of effectiveness, and then it starts to become less effective and less relevant as a new system and new ways of thinking start to emerge, and we have this emerging system which then comes up and will then form a further sort of loop. And there are various, you can see various points in this framework, various phases that can be described and that can that have a role to play in the system change. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm going to just highlight some of those where we found it to be really helpful in thinking about the work of the associates. So I'm going to focus a little bit, first of all, on this naming, which is over here in this in the incumbent system phase. And this is where people begin to sort of identify and articulate what the possibilities might be for change. What are the patterns that suggest that change is a potential, and they start to articulate that potential change. So in that space, our associates have really been doing quite a lot of activity, which has been around, for example, raising awareness of what is already happening, because there is plenty of creative health happening. It's just not necessarily visible to the system, or even to the people sometimes doing it don't recognise it as that is what they are doing. So it's been about that. It's been about raising awareness of the assets that there are around, so therefore the potential for those assets to contribute to a change, a new system, a new way of thinking. And of the people that are around, who's around, who's there, who can help us with this. So that naming, it's been that always feels like, I think when you think about system change, you feel like you sort of want to get straight into this bit at the end here, which is about how are we going to shine a light on this? What are the new things that we're going to do? But actually, this naming is a hugely important part of this, because otherwise people can't make that shift. The other bit, which you won't be surprised to hear, because I think we can see this in the work that associates have been doing, the other phase where they've been really active is in this connecting phase. So this is the bit, it's this really critical part of systems shift, and this is where people who are the sort of innovators, these early adopters, the people who get it, which will be many of you on this call today, you know, who get it and who see, oh, there's real potential here. It's about how do we form connections between those people, and build relationships and share resources and ideas and support, so that we're really growing the ideas around this and developing a sort of real strength. I think one of the focus group participants talked about this as the mycelium, that underground sort of fungal growth that is huge, and how we connect people up to support this. And again, that's been a huge piece of work for the associates. And again, I think it's really important to recognise that doesn't happen by accident. It does require activity. It's not just something that will, you know, if we just leave it alone, it will just happen naturally. It does need activity to support it. So that's been another area where the report that we'll get will highlight the work that the associates have been doing in that area, building relationships and fostering collaborations and sort of growing that strength. I think linked to this, I'm going to come over to this bit here, this bridging, which is this role between bridging between the incumbent system and the new system, and also bridging between different parts of the system and indeed different sectors. Again, I think a lot of us have been working in that space of bridging, of being that role, but it is hugely important. It's not about jettisoning something completely and we start again from scratch. It's about what is the bridge between one and the other. People are often those bridges, quite clearly, because we have people who are in those systems throughout this process. So how do we build those bridges between the old system and the new system? And again, there are examples of where associates have been effective in that. The other two I'm just going to mention briefly are this sort of what's called hospicing, and what in this is called decomposing, but our evaluators, we discussed this with them, we didn't like that term, and so we've talked about it as composting, but it's not in the model that I've got here for you, because that's taken from the original model. But this is the idea that it's important to sort of take care of the system as it is changing, as maybe elements of it are declining. We need to be taking care of it, thinking about what do we want to keep hold of, what do we want to remember, what's valuable about that system, and how can some of the ingredients of that system be used as a sort of good basis, a bit of compost, if you like, for the new system. What are the values that we might want to keep hold of from the old system? Again, it's not about just saying goodbye to it all, but recognizing that the old system supports the growth of the new system. Now, this two loops model it's not a completely linear model, but you can see that it is a model that moves along. And I would say that, you know, most of the work that we're doing in creative health we're still in this part of the system, in this declining system and emerging system. So we haven't got a lot of activity around this illuminating and system influencing. That will come later, but we can point to things that could work in that space, and that's certainly something we want to be thinking about in the future. How do we helpfully sort of exercise what they call system stewardship to help the system really sort of adopt and scale these approaches? And there's some nourishing that needs to be done of a new system. We can't just think we can put these things in place and they will happen. They will need support. They will need that nourishing, and not only the activities, but the people in these new systems as well. So I think it's recognising that most of the work of our associates has been in this sort of space on this left-hand side, coming into the emerging system, making some of that bridging happen. And what we're looking for the future is how do we do more of that, and how do we get to this point where we're actually spending our time nourishing and then illuminating the new system. And different systems will be in different places with some of this. So yeah, I think what you'll see with the report is you'll see, and it will be quite a lengthy report, but we will do a shortened version as well. You'll see where those associate roles have been active. I can't share those findings with you today because we're still working on those, but you'll see where those associates have been active in this sort of systems change. And it also helps us to think about, as we move forward, what are the key things, what are the key activities that we need to be doing collectively, and how come, and I think it helps us to understand why this work is complex and challenging, but ultimately really worthwhile doing. Now, as Liv said, I was thinking that I might be able to talk to you today a little bit about plans for the future beyond this programme, and we still do have plans beyond this programme, but I guess we're taking a little bit more of a pause given the restructuring that's inevitably going to have to happen in integrated care boards, to just think about how do we position this work. I think there's always an opportunity in these challenges that face us, so we will definitely be looking forward to that, but it's probably more important than ever that we think about how systems are quite rapidly, in this case, having to make changes. How do we best have input into that? So, as Liv's indicated, the associates' roles come to an end, but the programme of work of working with systems for NCCH does not, and we will want to continue to have relationships with all of you and people in systems, although it's going to be a hard task without my fantastic team of associates who can make those connections on the ground. But they're not all disappearing from us all entirely. We will be, I know, keeping in touch with them throughout. So I'll finish there. And I think if we've got time to pick this up in discussion at the end, we can do that then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jayne, and thanks, Liv, both for your presentations this morning and also all of your work to support this area over the programme. It has been felt and noticed in the sector and the region, so thank you both. Jayne Knight, you are up next.
Hello. Hello, I am Jayne Knight. As I said before, I'm the arts lead from Suffolk County Council. Jane Howard, I was watching your presentation, and the bit that was missing for me on that slide was the timeline. And actually, what I decided as I was looking at it is that is my life. And I started working in the public sector in the arts in 1984. So we are talking now 41 years, and and we're still in that middle bit. We are, and I say that because the journey that we are on, it is not just for Christmas, it's for life. Change is constant. How we hold on to what we're doing and what we're achieving is really, really important. And this is a long, long process. And I guess there are two key points that I'm going to make this morning on the creative health challenge and opportunity. Because we all know that people that participate in the arts have better health outcomes. Our colleagues at UCL have absolutely nailed that in terms of evaluation. The whole of the health system knows that it has to do something about prevention, but it can't. And we are stuck in a cycle where money can't be spent on prevention, and where we have fantastic arts organisations being nimble and just getting on with it. And the brilliant thing about that is things are happening. There is way more happening now than there was in 1984. There is that research. It is there. It's there for everyone to see. It's comprehensive. It's significant. But arts organisations continue to be independent and do great independent work. And the joined up strategic thinking is not happening. It means that the arts are at the centre of creative health, and health is like in another universe. And that's a problem for all of us. I actually don't want the arts sector to be in its own universe, because it means we can't decide what the best work is to do. We're not working in partnership to drive the change in health that is needed. We need those knowledge and intelligence teams from health to sit down with us and invest in our planning and development. But that doesn't happen because there's not enough health money coming into the system to influence the way we work. And we work to the agenda around where the money's coming from. And it's a real big challenge. And but we should never go, it's a really big challenge, we will just put our heads in the sand and not try to drive change. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen and actually give you a very short presentation about the work that the Norfolk and Suffolk Culture Board has been doing in terms of trying to get itself, here we go. Can we see that? A nod somewhere. Someone can see it. That's great. Okay, so the Norfolk and Suffolk Culture Board, I coordinate the board with my colleague Nikki Braithwaite from Norfolk County Council. We are both people from the arts sector. The board is a collaborative of cultural leaders that come together to tackle the strategic issues that are really hard to do on your own. And so you can see here, we've got 4 priorities, and health is one of them. Health is one of those things that we know the cultural sector cannot just tackle with individual organizations doing their own thing. So that's why health is one of those 4 things that we are looking at. That meant that we decided we needed to do some research. We needed to be sure that we knew what we were talking about when we were talking about creative health in Norfolk and Suffolk. We commissioned Creative Lives to do a mapping exercise, to have a number of discussions and debates. We wanted to find out, is this hunch that we've got that health aren't really at the table and that arts and creative people are just dancing off, doing great work without that strategic relationship? Is that true? Is there enough work going on already in this kind of scatter approach? What's happening? And Creative Lives, I will say, were an absolutely fabulous partner. They're working now with Essex, and I know they've been working with Livermore as well. So they looked at the activity that was going on. They looked at what good practice looks like. They looked at the workforce and the volunteer needs, and they looked at how can we make the case. This was all around co-production. There were forums, there were discussions, there were focus groups, there was a survey. We know it's a snapshot, but it's pretty good information. What we found was, of course, it's vibrant. There's lots of work going on out there. Some of it is really micro, and it's tap dancing in a village hall that welcomes everyone and supports people in the community with a range of needs, up to commissioned work, very specific, delivering to people who are referred from the health sector. We identified that there were certain groups that actually weren't being served. And again, this comes into that question about the strategic partnership with health. Maternity care. We know that there's been a few kind of micro projects around maternity. And we know at a national level that there's a big impact to be made. But we also know now in Norfolk and Suffolk, we haven't got enough of that work going on, and we need to work to change that. The other thing we identified, of course, rural challenges. And we also, this complex commissioning and funding landscape. You know, I am an experienced bureaucrat. Navigating this stuff is bananas, and now it's all going to change. And and I say this to everybody in the room, this is about people. And it is the people that we have found in the system that have unpacked the system for us. They have been our guides. They are holding the torch. Sometimes we shine the light on them. Sometimes they shine it on us. But actually, finding the people that are willing to go on this journey from the health sector with us is really important. And we do have some really great pioneers in our sector and in the health sector here. And, you know, really, it is a big shout out for Louise Hardwick and her work. Louise is one of those people that has got on with it. She has spent money in the system. She's had that strategic dialogue, and we continue to work with her to build change. So identifying those people to manage this landscape is really critical. We have established, where is the money coming from? It's coming from the Arts Council. It's coming from trusts and foundations. It's mostly not coming from health. There's a lot of short-term funding. I'm not telling anybody anything you don't know. You know, it's stop, go, very inefficient. You know, tragically inefficient. There's a gigantic need for creative practitioners to have professional development in this area. And there's a gigantic need for healthcare practitioners to have professional development in this area. And so that there's a big chunk of work to be done there. And if I say it's about the people, then actually finding out a way to deliver that professional development to the people on the front line is a big priority. Challenges around joining up, I have spoken about that, and the high quality research and all of the opportunities for collaboration, partnerships and learning. So we found out the tough stuff and the beautiful stuff. That's how it goes. We looked at investment and we found out, again, everything that we know. Short-term funding cycles, mostly because when health does invest, we get the crumbs. And even though those crumbs can be a big dollop of money, actually, for the creative sector, we get those crumbs, work them quite hard, but because they weren't strategic or planned, they're not then repeatable. And they become one-off, and maybe the person that scattered those crumbs moves on, and then all of the connection is lost. And that is something we really have to challenge ourselves on. The potential for partnership, massive, and the desire to scale up. This idea that we've done, it feels like we've done 1,000 pilot projects, you know, over the last 10 years, let alone the last 40 years, and that they all get banked, and then somehow 5 years later we start again. That is something that needs to be addressed. This is just a slide about the money, around the percentage of where the funding comes from, and you can see there that health and social care are a small partner, and that needs to change. And it's also about that strategic involvement. Those things come together. The opportunities are really there. This need for a comprehensive offer, this need for, again, I would call it the strategic engagement, the outcomes-based commissioning, and as always, we have in the creative sector suffered from a kind of challenge around evidence. It's the biggest rabbit hole that we go down. Where's the evidence? We can't really do it until we've got the evidence. And what we know is that there are lots of tools being used that don't have anything like the evidence that the arts has got behind them. So we know it's more than evidence, it is hearts and minds, and it's important to remind ourselves about that, I believe.
Jayne, can I just do my gentle
I need to move
chairing and
on.
ask you to wrap up in a minute?
Yeah, I think, honestly, I've said everything I need to say. Evidence and evaluation, it's all there. We just need to be good at evidencing our own work. I'm going to end up by just saying, if you want to work with us, we have a working party. We are working hard on a change programme. The focus of our change programme is going to be that professional development and that training of the workforce. We are identifying funds for that. We have had some fantastic colleagues around the table that are peeling it back and finding that money. That is health money that's going to deliver that training for us. If you want to work with us, we need as much help as we can get from people who want to roll their sleeves up and make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jayne. Thank you. Yeah, I will very swiftly move on because we are beginning to lose track of time. And I do want to make sure there's time for questions at the end. So Tim and Nick, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to start and then Nick's going to come after me. I'm going to say a bit about the strategic approach that we're trying to follow. It's nothing as organised as Jayne's just described, but we are trying to place the arts within the overall context of the wider determinants and the work we're doing on our health creation strategy. If my glamorous assistant could move me to the next slide, that would be very great.
I'm hoping that's going to work.
So I don't know how much you're into Belgian surrealism. It's one of my favourite paintings, but I use it because I think it's really important that we remember that the human condition is the one condition that the NHS is not very good at dealing with and actually probably has no business dealing with. But I think we are increasingly seeing over pathologization of certain social conditions, and those are areas where arts can be really helpful. Next slide, please, Nick. This was a project which we founded actually as a CCG during COVID. We just started a program to give small grants for health creation, and then lockdown happened and we had to start all over again, which was slightly frustrating. It was fascinating watching the voluntary sector leap into action, and people have been talking about agility. We saw some amazing agility and at risk voluntary sector organisations using the reserves up to address what people needed. But this was just a fantastic example of people working separately on a blanket, using remote and different techniques, feeling that connection that people have been talking about, feeling that ability to manage their emotions and work together. And not that I needed convincing, but if I ever had, this project would have convinced me. And you can still actually see a video about it on the NASPA website, and it is Social Prescribing Day. Next slide, please. Jayne was talking about the evidence base. There is a huge evidence base for this stuff, and I've just put one random slide in. This is the association between not getting depressed and involving yourself in cultural activities. I've actually been speaking recently to a guy called Jag Mundra, who's been doing some work for NASP, and he's actually used NHS techniques around PHQ-9 and stuff to compare talking therapies with the arts. And a particular example he did was a choir. And we found that with the choir, for mild to moderate depression, I think it was almost as effective as talking therapy and 14 times cheaper. And given that people are also waiting very often a very long time to get that therapy, we need to get much cleverer at using these resources that are there in the community to help people who are waiting and who where it's appropriate. Next slide, please. So we've been working in Herts and West Essex on a health creation strategy, which basically means prevention, but it's a much more positive way of looking at the world to say that we're actually trying to help create health. And we've stolen the definition of the Health Creation Alliance. And as you can see, it's about a sense of purpose and hope and mastery and all those things which, again, it's not the NHS's job to do, yet we pick up the pieces if it's not being done. So absolutely, as Jayne was saying, where's the NHS funding to support all this? And obviously there are rather a few more challenges on that front this week than there were last week. But anyway, next slide, please. This is our VCFSC Alliance in Herts and West Essex. We worked together with them on our health creation strategy, which we got signed off by the Integrated Care Partnership in December 22. And we have a creative health strand within that strategy. So what we're trying to do is make sure this is seen as part of the overall work of creating health. I think that's important for a number of reasons, not least that social prescribing shows us frequently that people are amenable to engaging in various arts activities, but the word arts actually puts them off. And they very often think, I'm not the sort of person that does arts and culture and that. And also, Nick will come on and talk about our access fund, but obviously a lot of people can't afford paint, brushes, paper, etc., etc. So it's a really important area to have support in even talking about the issue, let alone making sure the resources are there that people can engage with. Next slide, please. It is National Social Prescribing Day. This is one of my personal heroes, and Debs, who's now actually Debs Teal, is somebody who has a very significant experience of managing her mental health through art. And again, she's one of those people who didn't think art was for her initially, and it's pure chance in some ways. It's a fantastic video, and she'll be posting stuff today because it's National Social Prescribing Day. But I recommend people, if they haven't already heard of her or seen her, listen to that talk that she gave at the King's Fund a few years back. It's really, really powerful. But reinforcing the importance of those social prescribers there across the system. We've got groups, as everyone's saying, doing all sorts of things across the system. We really need to work together better to make sure there's no wrong door approach to all this, and people can find what's there. And social prescribing is absolutely critical in that. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Tim. I won't go into, I haven't got time to go into detail of all these different elements here, but I just wanted to say very quickly that everything that's been picked up so far in terms of having strategic direction, a group of people talking about it at a high level, finding advocates within the system, all of those things are sort of coalescing in Hertfordshire at the moment around various different projects. We've got behind these projects, we've got partners in local authorities, health and social care, voluntary sector, local enterprise partnerships, sport, the university, and potential some commercial partners. We've got mixed funding sources for these different projects. They're all about advocacy for the arts sector across different agendas. It just needed some coordination within Hertfordshire that we've been waiting for many, many years for. That now appears to be coming online through the University of Hertfordshire getting on board around for the Herts Cultural Partnership, which is number 4. So we're looking at, so number 1 is around refreshing a signposting website, sort of a business to business model, where we're signposting cultural providers to relevant resources and links, and a chance to create a new directory online for providers to find other providers and share their work. That's going to be creativehertfordshire.com, hopefully coming online in the next month or so. We've also got funding from various different sources for a new What's On, a new activity listing for creative and cultural activities across the county. We're using the model of Moving More, which I know is also adopted in Norfolk. So it's an open data-based platform, and a public listing of cultural activities in the county is what we're aiming for. And the Moving More programme for Physical Activity Finder is very successful in linking up with social prescribers and joining up conversations with local residents about what they could be going off to do. So we're really interested in how we can piggyback off developments with Moving More in the county and the engagement that they've had with GPs and health colleagues. The third model there is the Culture Access Fund that Tim just mentioned. We've found some health inequalities funding to start a small pot that we're going to be going to social prescribers around the county to say, of the residents that you're talking to who are interested in culture, but if the opportunities aren't there locally, can we use this fund to get a dancer to run an additional session there near them, or to fund materials, or to get a group to get to a different activity. So we have no idea what sorts of activities this fund will support, but it's a brand new opportunity, and we've never had a pot in Hertfordshire that is just to help support access to culture in this way. So that's another new thing we've got. And we've got Hearts Mind Network hosting that for us as well. So we've got another really good range of partners around that too. The Hearts Cultural Partnership is this bit of coordination that we've been waiting for in the county for ages. So the University of Hertfordshire are offering to host this. We're talking to them about how that's going to look, but again, it's based on the model of a Hearts Sports and Physical Activity Partnership that has been successful in the county for 15 plus years. So we're trying to use models in sports sector and other sectors to see how it could be applied to arts and culture in the county. The final point there is just plugging opportunities for creative health that's been delivered around the county. As other people have said this morning, loads of things going on. We just want to try and link it together. We want to connect to what's going on, and we want to amplify it through these projects. There's more coming online as well. The last thing I was just going to say was, this is happening in Hertfordshire because of multiple different conversations, and colleagues like Tim and colleagues like Olivia as well, having lots of conversations. So please don't underestimate the ripple effect of your work or conversations that you might be happening, because this all of a sudden is starting to form in Hertfordshire in a really exciting way. I'll put our contacts in the chat, but it's really nice to speak to you this morning and to hear more about your amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick and Tim. Really great to hear about it. From a different part of the region that I'm not quite as familiar with, so it sounds really fantastic, but also can definitely echo some of the experiences in the Norfolk and Suffolk part of the region too, so really great to hear. Thank you. Now passed on to Angie.
Hi everybody, it was great to hear that, Tim and Nick. It's amazing how passionate people can make things happen. I'm going to try and share my slides. I am definitely more of a Zoom person, so just bear with me and let me know if you can see this once it arrives. So is that all good for you?
Yep.
Great stuff. So yeah, we've been involved with National Centre for Creative Health and with Liv's work since the beginning, and also very involved in the work that Jayne has been doing with Creative Lives. So 5 years ago, or just over, Britten Peers Arts began a transition to being a learning organisation around creative health. Our aim was really to become a kind of centre of excellence around music and creative health, but we specifically wanted to incorporate knowledge exchange along with our kind of community activity, with the goal of increasing the efficacy and kind of coalescing that research and practice. So against the background, of course, of COVID, the importance of health and wellbeing for everyone, and the intersection with arts, health and wellbeing practice and creativity became really paramount. And our creative health programme became, I guess, in essence, some kind of creative laboratory to help us develop innovative and effective models, training, development opportunities, and ways of connecting and learning with each other. We wanted to very much develop partnerships and collaboration to help what Jayne was talking about, the strategic thinking and the knowledge around particularly the power of music in society for well-being. Our ultimate aim being to combine music and heritage activity and community well-being to improve society's well-being. We're really passionate about the power of creativity to enhance health and well-being and foster connection community, but we're also deeply committed to workforce development and strengthening cross-sector working through this knowledge exchange. And we've developed quite exciting and innovative sustainable approaches to doing this, to engagement and participation, and to find out what best practice looks like. And we've evolved and we've had to adapt to a kind of changing cultural environment. But we've embedded this kind of system for reflection and evaluation, which really measures our impacts and outcomes and charts our learning. I suppose our approach at Britten Peers Arts is unique in that it really wants to look at the strategic approach and knowledge sharing and cascade that both internally and externally, building relationships and partnerships both locally and regionally and nationally across networks and strategic communities, because our aim is not only to deliver, but to influence. We want to create conditions for cultural shifts where creative health can flourish, and artists, musicians can equip themselves for the future. So we deliver locally, but we reach regionally, and we want to impact nationally. And this direct experience of delivery, which I'll talk about in a moment, and that kind of two-way flow of learning enables us to hopefully stay ahead of the curve and lead the way in creative health and music. So, for example, when the Norfolk and Suffolk Culture Board commissioned research on creative health in the region, we were at the forefront helping to steer that research and host the subsequent launch of the report involving directors of public health for Norfolk and Suffolk and an audience of high-level leaders in health and social care and the arts in the region. And we're now part of the next stage of creating that place partnership approach for looking at how we can evolve that in the region. And as I said, we've been involved since the beginning with the NCCH, particularly around Creative Health Associates, and working with Liv very closely. But, you know, a lot has changed in 5 years since we began our creative health journey. I think creative health is now a more recognised approach to engendering health and well-being, both at a government level and local health services, and definitely in the arts. I think it has traction, and I think there's a wider recognition and an abundance of creative health activities and an acknowledgement that creative health can tackle some of the key issues in society: loneliness, mental health, dementia, Parkinson's, maternal mental health, long COVID, and much more. And of course, research is amassing through UCL's Socio-Biobehavioural Research Group, who we host the Arts Health Research Intensive every year here at Snape, at Britten Peers Arts. And we work closely with the Wellcome Trust, King's College London Shaper Project. And, you know, we continue to develop our academic partnerships with Anglia Ruskin and University of East Anglia and University of Suffolk, because we want to work very closely with academics and find out what their methodologies and what they're learning. That's part of our strategic initiative. So while we do work at the strategic level, we do stuff on the ground. We work with our communities, with children and young people through mini music, music makers, our local Group A, which is a singing group, and of course lots of extensive schools work. And we work with those in later life and people with Parkinson's. We have Skylarks, our singing programme, and we do have a 20-year partnership with HMP Warren Hill, where we've delivered award-winning music projects. So we really like to deliver as well as think more strategically. That's really important, to have that kind of sense of knowing what it's actually like to deliver on the ground. But we have developed these innovative models for strategic thinking and development around creative health. Our think tanks are on a wide range of issues, from this year, more recently, music's role in end of life and grief, which is one of the NCCH's area. We've done music in criminal justice settings, young musicians' health and well-being, music and maternal health, and the Singing for Health Network came out of a think tank several years ago. But also research projects, new networks, training, all kinds of things have evolved from these think tanks. The latest think tank on music for grief and loss has evolved a project called Music to Die For, which is about using the power of music to tell people's stories. And we also have a national alliance called the Wellbeing Equity Musicians Alliance, which is about looking at standards and skilling up the workforce for the world that we all live in and trying to engender creative health. This model of peer learning and education and sharing ideas very much crosses different agencies that we work with through our cross-sector training programme. So we host Sing to Beat Parkinson's programme, various CPDs, which we've worked with Anglia Ruskin University and others, as well as skilling up community musicians in our area. And I've already mentioned some of the academic partnerships that we have in the region. We created a new model called a Spark event to catalyse conversation at a regional level. We've had regional Spark events on creative health, on young musicians and music education, music for health and well-being and vocal health and so on. And, we really want to engender creative health as a priority regionally through these events. We're also dedicated to nurturing artistic talent. We're passionate about supporting the talent and growth of musicians. And we know that musicians have a portfolio career. Often they will be professional singers and musicians, but they will be doing work in the community. And we like to think that our unique legacy, combined with where we are as a location, has really made us a place of excellence and inspiration, attracting musicians from around the world, and a space where creativity can flourish and new ideas can take shape. Our residencies provide an invaluable opportunity for cross-sector development, and Music to Die For, one of the projects that I mentioned, has evolved out of a residency we had last year, along with another residency around a similar theme, where we had Samsara Choir, who developed their vocal work looking at grief and loss, and we shared that with our partnership with the local hospice. We have a couple of retreat programs. Our MOT retreat is particularly for musicians who work in challenging settings. These could be people referral units, prisons, SEND schools, whatever that might be, basically in the community for those who benefit from creative health. But we know that musicians can burn out, and we've created this program to help rejuvenate and refresh their practice. And lastly, our newest iteration is our Future Leaders program, because we are committed to building a music industry that's democratic, inclusive and holistic and accessible. And we want to enable everyone's right to a vibrant cultural life. And we believe that one of the levers for change is a fresh approach to leadership. So we want to help shape the future of the music industry by investing in emerging leaders, and of course a music industry that puts creative well-being, creative health at its heart. And this programme was piloted last year. This year it's been so strongly applied for, we're running 2 iterations of that programme. So just to summarise then, being part of a vibrant creative health scene in the East enables us all to embed creative health into the fabric of our well-being for our communities, and innovations like the NCCH Creative Health Associates programme has really provided vital support for practitioners and policymakers, helping to embed creative health approaches across diverse settings by fostering collaboration between artists, healthcare professionals, and more social care settings. This initiative really empowers individuals and organisations to help develop sustainable, impactful creative health interventions. And as we continue to build on this momentum, we strengthen the case for creativity as an essential component of holistic well-being, ensuring that more people can access the benefits of arts and culture in their health and care journeys. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Angie. Thank you.
I just have to figure out how to stop sharing. There we go.
Brilliant. The technology has, after a slightly bumpy start this morning, has actually been smooth for everyone. So 20 minutes to go, everyone. Keep your fingers crossed. Just a reminder, I'm Alex, and I'm going to put my culture, health and wellbeing hat on for a short update for some items with you all from the Alliance. There is a new report that I have just put in the chat, which is an evaluation report of the quality framework created and co-produced by the sector and published by the Alliance. Just some really key findings from that report, but feel free to have a good look at the report itself. It was kind of, the evaluation was looking at how kind of the embeddedness of the quality principles in the sector. And I just think it's quite an interesting point that collaborative, person-centered and creative were the most commonly and sort of confidently used and applied principles within the framework, whereas sustainable, realistic, equitable and reflective were more challenging to prove to be embedded. And I think that's probably reflected in the conversations that we've been having this morning. That probably could have been a case study itself in the report. The quality framework has been found to be really widely regarded and well received by the sector. It is flexible, accessible, and thoughtfully designed, which I would really agree with as well. What has been found in terms of the kind of the appropriateness and relevance across sectors, and again reflecting on some of the other topics we've heard from this morning, is that actually that quality framework is really adaptable across the different sectors and can be a really useful tool for having those some of those bridging conversations, or those bringing those together, as we've heard that is happening in Hertfordshire. It's been really a useful tool for things like advocacy, practice development, and strategic alignment with health partners. It's increased confidence, particularly for practitioners, in how they can articulate the value of their work and use their shared language by using the sort of framework as a cross-sector tool. That can reinforce that sense of shared language between creative and health sectors. And just lastly, the framework has been found to improve co-creation and enabling inclusive, participant-driven projects, which has really informed responsive, sustainable project planning. Whether the resources that are there then to make that sustainable, I think we all are slightly questioning, but it can be a really useful tool for tackling some of the challenges that have been raised this morning. The other very quickly things I want to just raise from a Alliance perspective and a sector perspective, there is Creativity and Wellbeing Week is coming up. Now, I know there's some really locally organised things. I noticed that in your slide, Nick, that you were talking about May, and I'm very much hoping that is the May date that you're talking about. The Creativity and Wellbeing Week is the 19th to 25th of May. I know there's some locally coordinated activity in Norfolk and Suffolk, and delightfully now in Hertfordshire too. For any practitioners on the call who want to sort of highlight the work that they're doing in this area, you can upload content to the website, or it's also a really great way of understanding what other activity that is happening around this kind of area of work. And lastly, sort of a next step for some of this work is the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance will have a new regional support role for supporting creative health development. There has been a role in the North and in the East Midlands, and we in the Eastern region are having one in the coming months. We are still kind of shaping up the job description and the challenges, and almost daily there's something else we feel we need to kind of reflect on and respond to and shape within that. But there will be resource and capacity, and we're working with Suffolk County Council to increase that resource available for that work, which is really exciting. So there will be a bit of coordination and capacity in the region to move this, keep working at a strategic level in this area. So I think that is, and 1 minute over into the Q&A. Thank you everyone for keeping to time. All of the speakers for this morning, and now it's your chance to. I don't know, I think we've had Esther from the National Centre keeping an eye on the chat. Esther, have you spotted any questions you'd like to share? Anyone else can pop something in the chat now, or we can spotlight you and you can ask in real life anything that you've got pressing.
So up until now, the questions have mainly been, can I have the reference or the link to something? So Claire Thompson looks like she's got our first question.
Claire, would you like to speak in real life, or are you happy for me to read your question? I will go for it. I will represent Claire. Thank you. How do you see devolution affecting or assisting the development of the creative health sector in the East? Oh, a nice small one to start with then. Lovely. Thank you, Claire. Anyone would like to take that on first? Tim, go for it.
Well, I don't think any of us know yet is the simple answer, but it's a further set of complexities to add to what's happening to the health service. And I think it goes back to what everyone's been saying, is we just need to carry on doing what we can and building the evidence base in particular, because I think the evidence is there and it's not getting through at the moment to the extent it needs to.
Thank you. Jayne.
Hi, great question, Claire. There is an opportunity there, and we have local government review as well. So on devolution, if we look around the country and look at other areas that have got a mayor, often the mayoral office really like culture, and there is an understanding of the value and impact of culture. We see there are funds right now, AHRC funds, that are only available to devolved authorities that have a devolved mayor, and we want a slice of that. I think alongside LGR, local government review, and what's happening in health, the boundaries that Olivia talked about earlier, the fact that in Norfolk and Suffolk we've got two different ICPs, it has some complexity. That idea of Norfolk and Suffolk being a region, and if there was some alignment around that, that would be really interesting. If we have local government review, we know that culture at the moment in local government sits with both the districts, boroughs and cities and counties. So it's not brought together, and often isn't seen to have the punch that it's actually got. And so if local government review comes together, we might have actually cultural directorates in our local authorities that actually have a big ring around the whole thing. I think that would really help. I think there's actually, in all of this change, there is everything to play for if we can just hold it together and hold on to the people that we trust, and see the journeys that those people go on as well. I'm hoping that some people become super senior and carry their drive and belief in creative health with them. So I think there's a lot to play for, and there's a lot that could slip through the cracks if we don't hold on to ourselves. Culture is not statutory. It could just get forgotten in LGR. If we get a mayor who doesn't give a damn, then we won't get anywhere near them, and all of that stuff. But I'm going to focus on let's really try to make it work.
Thanks, Jayne. Liv, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking this question, Claire, because it's been in my mind as well. And I think I'm quite glass half full on it, actually, because I think one of the things that poses a somewhat of a challenge to us taking work forward can be the nature of how politics is played out on the national stage can lead to that short-termism, that sort of 4 years, and not wanting to invest in the long term. If you have devolution, hopefully you could potentially change that with people more invested in their communities and more invested in wanting to work on population health and the well-being of their communities for the long term. Yeah, I'll end there. Handing to Esther, I think.
Thank you. Jayne, there was a question for you from Elrica Erasmus, which was, how can we contact you to hear more about working together on developing and delivering CBD training? So I wonder if you can perhaps put your email in the chat or a link there, please. And Lauren Mack has also put something in the chat. Lauren, would you like to speak? So Lauren's saying that they work for Suffolk Wildlife Trust, and a lot of their activity really does come under the banner of creative health, but they'd like to be more involved with social prescribing, and how can they find ways to be signposted to practitioners? I'm sure that someone on this call can help Tim Anfliogff and others. But know your hearts.
I'm happy to take that one initially and then hand over to colleagues.
Thank you.
So social prescribing, we've not talked about it possibly as much as we should have done on National Social Prescribing Day, but to give you a little bit of an overview of how that is managed in the system, it's very different. So there's little bits of contract that often go out to the voluntary sector. So for example, in Norfolk, you have a piece of it that will sit with I think citizens advice, and there's other pieces of social prescribing that are done by doctor's surgery. So if you're a GP surgery and you're keen to invest in that, you may have a social prescribing role that's linked to your surgery. You may have health, they also call them health and wellbeing coaches. If you're interested more in those roles, you can look at them. You find them on the NHS website. It's all part of the personalised care within the NHS that is now seen somewhat to be business as usual. So that means that within our part of the system, there's no one actually who's kind of heading up social prescribing, and certainly within Norfolk and Waveney, that has been identified as a bit of a gap in terms of who's leading on that to coordinate as the social prescribers across the patch. So what that means to you on the ground is, I think, don't think that someone's sitting there with a neat and tidy directory. I know my colleague Esther used to work for NASP, which is a sort of, it sits outside of the NHS, but an organisation that champions social prescribing. So NASP is one route. You could perhaps sign up to their newsletters, but I think my bottom line to you would be connect on the ground. So look to work with your primary care networks that I have put on the slide that I showed, and also think about your integrated neighbourhood teams as they start to form, and find these people on the ground to connect with at that neighbourhood level. I hope that helps. Did anyone else want to come in on that?
It's a great answer, Liv. Excellent.
I was just going to type some stuff. So I think there should be a lead in the ICB, but like many of these specific roles, they may be disappearing. They also should have a voluntary community faith and social enterprise alliance, which is a good place to look. And then the CVS, individual councils for voluntary service, so they may be called community action, blah, blah, or other things, should also help. But yeah, it is a shame there is no national directory. There aren't really regional local directories, but there's something like 4,500 social prescribers across the country now, so it shouldn't be too hard to find them.
And yeah, to second, thanks for mentioning the VCSE assembly mechanism, and I will try and follow up. And I think if we do an email out afterwards, I can send the links to that. We did that one time before, so you can connect with your one on the region. So yes, thanks, Tim, for reminding me of that. LinkedIn is the other way to find them. I've connected with loads of social prescribers by just typing social prescriber Luton into LinkedIn and finding them that way.
Brilliant. Some very practical tips there, as well as strategic ones. Are there any other questions lurking in the chat? Have you spotted anything? If not, I was going to ask Nick and Tim if they might be able to elaborate a little bit more on what they think the enablers have been for some of the kind of coming together of activity in Hertfordshire beyond possibly those just conversations, and maybe that is the answer.
Nick's looking very thoughtful. I'll let him answer.
I think it comes down to people, like was mentioned before. We've got, and you may or may not have this advocate, but we have a particularly supportive, outward-facing county sports partnership. I've just put a mention in the chat about actually look at how sport are talking to social prescribers. You might be able to piggyback off those routes as well. The culture, dance is included under Sport England's priorities, so there is a way in for culture into conversations about sport and how well organised they are. And we've had our county sports partnership actually say, do you know what? A strong cultural sector makes our sports sector stronger. So the sports partnership have said, we'll help on this particular project. And they found me a university graduate to help me over the last 12 months. They put a little bit of money in, and we're now looking at the new provider website being refreshed, directly replicating how sport are talking to their providers. So it's trying to find someone who gets it, trying to find someone or an organisation that's actually willing to put their hands up to say, we'll support this on the basis of a group of organisations. And that's never going to be a guarantee, and you don't know where they're going to come from. And I think that was why I was saying don't underestimate where your conversations might lead. Because about 5 years ago, I was having a conversation with someone who I've just bumped into again, who's just said, actually, how can I involve the university students at the University of Hertfordshire in supporting outreach with cultural organisations? They're going, where did that come from? So there are people that get sport and arts and culture personally, but it's not part of their day job, and it's trying to find them really. And I think. But I think what's also come from this call is the passion that you've all got, and that does resonate with other people that you're talking to. I've definitely seen that. I think there's just that sort of catalyst of multiple conversations just starting to merge in Hertfordshire. I don't have the secret sauce, sorry.
Damn it. Thank you very much. Angie, did you want to come in?
Well, only to just kind of say that we've had conversations in Suffolk about the model of the sports partnerships, and the funding through Sport England is a really interesting model that could be duplicated in creative health. Obviously that funding comes straight from Sport England, and maybe it's if we're struggling to get health money, then Arts Council England could be a source for creating a similar model to Sports England, where it divests money specifically into creative health, and we use a very similar model. It's just something that seems to work very successfully. It gets money right down to the grassroots, right down to the tap dancing teachers in the village hall, as Jayne would say, but also to lots of other organisations too, and it skills the workforce, and I think there's definitely something to be considered there.
Thank you. Liv?
Yeah, just to come in on the mention of sports, I think there absolutely is a lot to learn about how that works, and certainly those active organisations like Active Norfolk, I think someone's put Active Suffolk in the link, tend to have roles that are working very closely with health. I linked up with the Bedford active organisation, their health inequalities officer, who is quite well linked into what's happening with the integrated neighbourhood teams on that patch. So I think whilst there's learning to be done from that conversation, it, as any model, is not without its challenges. And the colleague from Sport that I met there was very quick to say of the challenges that is happening with the Sports England funding. So it's not as neat and tidy as we would like it to be. I think that sometimes we can look over there and go, oh yeah, that looks lovely. But there's definitely learning to happen.
And Tim?
Very quickly, I just think there's something about, I know it's not a good time to be asking for money from the NHS, but there is a huge evidence base. We also know we're over pathologising human distress on a regular basis. We're over prescribing antidepressants and painkillers. These are all things that are expensive as well as unhelpful. And if we can really work together with public health, with the local authorities, in a way that says we all understand the impact we can make by actually making really cheap, straightforward ways of human beings interacting with each other, we'll save money and have, everyone's saying we can't afford to go on like we are, yet we keep going on like we are. And actually arts is a critical way of changing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we are coming to the end of the meeting. Liv and Jayne, you've both got your hands up, and so I'm going to hand over to both of you for the final close of the session with a big thank you for all of your work in the region.
Thanks, Alex. So I had one final comment on that last point around overprescribing. I feel like there's a lot of people who've come, and Deb's story is one, please do check that out, it was shared in the chat earlier, who have experienced arts and had to push against the system's keenness to keep them ill, and that sick role that we have within society. We quite need people to either be very unwell or fine, and actually we know that that's not the human condition, that it doesn't quite work like that. So I think there's more to be done in helping the system to appreciate that people can get well and how we support people to get well, and that could be quite cost saving in the long run and also very beneficial for individuals involved. I think Jayne might also want to come in on this, but so I'm just going to say big thanks to everybody. It's been an amazing job role to have. It's been wonderful working with you all, and I'm going to hand over to my very lovely programme manager who has supported me so well throughout the last 18 months.
Thanks, Liv. I was going to come in on that point, so I will do that first. So just to say that one of the things that the Associates programme, has helped us to identify NCCH is that you're absolutely right. There is plenty of evidence out there, and our question is, why isn't it getting there? And it's partly because it is quite it's held in complex research reports that are quite long and detailed. Not everybody has the inclination to read those, or even knows that stuff is there, and even knows to look for it. One of the things that we're doing at NCCH at the moment is working on some resources that are specifically targeting specific roles within the health and care sector that speak to them directly, very simply and very clearly, that articulate some of that evidence for those people who really aren't going to have time to go and read that, those fantastic reports that we're all sort of familiar with. So watch this space on some of that. But yes, that's what I was going to say. But since I feel like now I'm having the last word, which wasn't my intention at all, I was expecting Liv to have the last word. But again, just to say a big thank you to Liv for the work that she's done over the last 18, 20 months, I think it is now. It's been fantastic to see, the growth in sort of the networking, the recognition of the value of the work that's happening, and the enthusiasm that's here today. So yeah, just big thank you, Liv, and thank you to all of you for your continued passion and enthusiasm for this work, and we'll see this go from strength to strength. I'm sure, despite all the challenges that we know lie ahead, it's part of it, isn't it? That's part of what it is. So thank you all very much.